I just wanted to play video games.
Hello, boys. Welcome back to Honey Badger Arcade. My name is Brian. I am not a furry, and today we're going to be talking about the Odyssey again. So, when the initial teaser trailer dropped, I made a video about it expressing concern that Christopher Nolan might not get it. And I was a little bit worried, but it wasn't necessarily about like filling quotas or whatever, but there was something already kind of anachronistic about it because the characters were speaking in modern dialogue, and there's something really, I don't know, disenchanting about doing that. I mean, yes, the Greeks didn't speak with English accents, but the idea of an English accent in these kinds of movies is to make the film feel like it's old. This is like a tactic or a technique that's done all the time. For example, in Lord of the Rings, everyone has accents so that you think, oh, this is from another time. And that's the purpose of that. But it seems that my fears are confirmed because we have learned more information. So I want to talk a little bit about the ways that I think that explain why this film's going to be an absolute trash fire. It'll probably make money. I have no doubt about that because Nolan is, sort of like praised as one of the greatest directors of our time. I think he's pretty overrated, and I know that might be like a cursed thing to say, but that's just what I believe. But I'm going to explain why this is actually a real problem, and it's not probably going to be for the reasons that you guys think. So we're talking about Troy, or I'm not Troy, the Odyssey, okay? I don't know why I said Troy, because even that movie's paused. But, okay, so what are some of the problems people are talking about? Well, obviously you have, like I said, the casting issues. Lupita Nyong'o playing the most beautiful woman in the world, Helen of Troy. You have strange casting choices like Elliot Page is rumored to be in it. I think that she is, but she won't be playing Achilles as much as I think that would be hilarious. She is playing one of the crew members. So, but still very, very strange. And again, it's ironically out of place because, well, I'll get to it later. And you have Zendaya playing Athena. Again, very strange casting choices. And one might argue, and I have a feeling there might be a lot of truth to this, that the reason for these casting choices is because Nolan wants to win an Oscar. And in order to win an Oscar, and of course this is all speculation, in order to win an Oscar, you are required to meet a certain diversity quota. You have to have, I think it's like at least 2 characters that are major players that are, of a underrepresented group, which means you can't have movies that just feature a white cast. You just can't, right? And you have to probably make concessions for female characters, especially again if you're telling or retelling a very old story, because of course they would view all of that stuff as highly problematic and regressive. So this is going to be a big obstacle, but it's not like Nolan is hamstrung by this. He's going along with this willingly. But where I think the real problem is, and this isn't a Nolan problem, this is a Hollywood problem. The real problem is that Hollywood disenchants everything now. They remove the mystery and the wonder and the imagination and anything that is transcendent or spiritual, immaterial, that's all gone. And everything has to make sense. And Nolan in particular has a problem with this as well. If you remember, when he made Batman Begins, a movie I like. It's actually like my second favorite Batman movie after Batman Returns, which is the best Batman movie. Don't at me. But when he made Batman Begins, he spends the majority of the film trying to rationally explain how Batman works in the real world. And a lot of people were very excited about that. I thought it was an interesting thing, but I didn't think it was necessary. But he felt the need to ground Batman in reality, and that was like the big achievement, was explaining where the costume comes from, explaining where all of his gadgets come from, how everything works. The problem with that is it disenchants the character. Now, Batman isn't supernatural, I get that, but there's still something fascinating about the unknown, and the problem is that people like Nolan need everything explained. They need it all spelled out. They need the unknown to be known. And so you lose something. And this is especially bad when you're dealing with ancient stories like myths, because you completely rip out the mystery. And I have a feeling that this film, despite the fact that, it appears to imply that there's going to be a lot of the, the trademark things in it, like the Cyclops and the sirens, etc. I have a feeling that he's going to be working really hard to ground it in something. And I think that is going to disenchant the film. Again, there's a lot of suggested things, but I worry about that. And this is his problem, is that he is a materialist at the end of the day. He sees everything as a matter of cause and effect. He sees everything as a matter of what is realistic. And I think that it's going to lose something as a result of that. I think that's more important than the casting of Lupita Nyong'o as Helen, or the Trojan horse not being on wheels, even though the earliest artwork of the Trojan horse showed it on wheels, like from 500 BC or something like that, right? So even though Homer didn't say it explicitly, the earliest artwork of it was that, and no one took an issue with it. We all have an image in our mind of what the Trojan horse looks like. And look, there was another film that came out before called Troy. I think it came out in 2004 or 2006, something like that. And it also did that. That's why I'm saying this isn't really a Nolan problem. If you remember, the original Troy had no gods, no supernatural anything, and Achilles wasn't invulnerable in a mythological sense. He just seemed to be a really good warrior, and it just so happened that he was killed by a bunch of other stuff, but one of the things was an arrow, in his heel. And that's where, so they're basically saying, in a way, and I think they do this with this movie too, is to it's kind of disrespectful to ancient people. It presumes that ancient people are dumb, and that they would just put things together that maybe don't make sense to to us. They put together things and make it something else, something grander than it actually is. And I think that it's a really disrespectful thing. I have a serious problem with that. I think that we have to re-enchant the world. I think that it's okay that there are things that we don't understand, because that's the truth. That's more true than us having a full understanding of everything. And when you take that out, and they did it again in Troy 2004, when you strip that and you take out the sort of the supernatural elements, because you think that the supernatural is some kind of backwards way of thinking, which is a progressive worldview, by the way. So in that regard, and that's what I mean when I say, sometimes people don't know what woke means, woke being progressive. They think that it comes down to these very surface level things like, racial representation, LGBTQ representation, criticizing capitalism. It's not just that. It's a materialist worldview. It's a worldview that says the only thing that's real is what we can see and taste and touch and measure, and that there's nothing beyond that. And when you have that worldview, it inevitably leads to nihilism. But also, it's it doesn't allow room for the things we don't know, which the truth is we don't. There's lots that we don't understand about our world. There is much more, you know? So I think that with all that said, Nolan's a really good director, but the problem is that he thinks that everything needs to make physical sense. Every gadget, every event, every motivation has to be explained. There is no mystery. Everything is mechanics. It's a very scientific way of seeing the world, rather. And he seems adverse to mythology. And I think a lot of people in the business are. And I wonder, too, if this isn't an attack on the transcendent, whether they know it or not, every time this stuff gets done, because all it does is it reduces everything. It's like all that is what is in front of us, right? So there are no meta truths. This is almost the same as what George Lucas did with Star Wars when he explained the Force as, metachlorians, or at least that's how people saw it. Now, turned out that the metachlorians is not quite what people thought, but that it did disenchant the Force a lot. Whereas in the original trilogy, the Force was mysterious. It was it was difficult to comprehend, and that made it appealing. That's what was appealing about it. So I think that as people in this culture, we have to I think what we should do or consider, I won't tell anybody what to do, what we should consider is re-embracing the mystery, re-embracing the enchantment, and not needing everything to be spelled out for us. Because I think you lose something when you do that. And I'm afraid that this is going to be the Odyssey's largest hurdle. So, the one last thing I want to say about this too, that I think I'm going to make a prediction about this movie. This goes back to more of the baseline woke stuff. So, Christopher Nolan made an interesting statement about Helen of Troy that I don't think that enough people are talking about. So I'm going to mention it here. I haven't seen anyone talk about this. In the original story, Helen of Troy is the cause of the Trojan War. So she's the one who sparks the war, right? And this is sort of it's a timeless part of this story. Is it's very crucial that the Trojan War begins because Helen of Troy abandons her duty as queen of Sparta to run off with Paris. Okay? And that's what sparks the Trojan War. And Christopher Nolan has decided that he thinks that that's a little bit too neat and simple, and he's going to add nuance. Now, I think that is extremely concerning because I think he's going to change the cause of the war completely. And that's a bit of a problem. So, in the original story, Helen was married to Menelaus, who was the king of Sparta. And as his wife, she was the queen. And they had a child together named Hermione. Homer doesn't really describe their marriage as, anything other than a royal union. Likely political, as most marriages were. That doesn't necessarily mean that they didn't love each other, as Menelaus clearly loved and valued her deeply, which is why he was willing to go to war for 10 years to get her back. But she does run off with Paris. And I think that there's a lesson in that, the lesson being if you abandon your responsibilities, it could lead to some kind of catastrophe like this. But I feel like there's going to be a change in the plot to essentially absolve Helen of any wrongdoing, or maybe make Menelaus into an abusive husband or something like that. I don't know. We don't know. The movie's not out yet. But my prediction is they're going to somehow absolve Helen of responsibility, or at least complete responsibility, or they're going to implicate someone else, or create some kind of context that alters the reasoning. So just something to throw out there. I think it's crucial. But look, let me know what you guys think about this in the comments. And please like, share, subscribe. Do you guys want to watch Troy? Or not Troy. See, I'm getting them mixed up. Are you gonna watch the Odyssey? Let me know. I probably won't. And yeah, so with that said, like, share, subscribe, and all that good stuff. And I'll talk to you guys in the next one. Long live Vivian.
I just wanted to play video games.